More than a half-century ago, there was a research and development group at Suzuki called Research 3, usually known by its Japanese name, Kensanka. Their mission was strictly to win Grand Prix motorcycle races. If not for this group of passionate individuals, it would be impossible to tell the story of Suzuki's racing activities. The following documentary is about Suzuki's history, as well as the history of the Kensanka. Proud smiles preserved in old photos. This shot from 1954 shows the team celebrating their win at the second annual Mount Fuji ascent race. Suzuki's official race activities began the previous year at the first Mount Fuji ascent race, where their diamond-free motorized bicycle won despite its modest 60cc displacement engine. Suzuki won again in 1954, this time with Rinsaku Yamashita riding the new 90cc Koleda, the company's first complete motorcycle. These two consecutive wins marked the beginning of a glorious racing heritage. Changing the name from Suzuki Loom Manufacturing Company to Suzuki Motor Company Limited the same year, Suzuki set its future course as a manufacturer of motorcycles and automobiles. In 1955, Japan's first full-fledged motorcycle race was staged in the foothills of Mount Asama as volcanic smoke hung in the air. Suzuki entered fresh on the heels of the two consecutive Mount Fuji victories. Spirits were high as the team arrived with 5 of Suzuki's latest racing machines, the Koleda SV. Sadly, the results betrayed the company's expectations. In the wake of their defeat at Asama, Suzuki withdrew from competitive racing. However, the team returned to Asama 4 years later for the 1959 race. Members of Suzuki's R&D department had secretly continued developing a new racing machine back in Hamamatsu. These engineers firmly believed it necessary to go all in if they were to improve the performance of their motorcycles. They were also eager to taste success once again. From a business perspective as well, winning races becomes a highly effective sales promotion tool for conveying an appealing image of performance to consumers. Following a 3-year absence from the race scene, company president Shunzo Suzuki saw the importance of this and issued an order to re-enter the race world. With this, development of a new racing machine gained new momentum, and the finishing touches were put on the Koleda RB. It was Suzuki's first purpose-built racing machine.
車が落ち着いてきてからはかなり自信がありましたね。性能的にね。
The general opinion of the day was that two-stroke engines were not well suited to racing. Even so, company president Shunzo Suzuki believed them to be a distinguishing feature of the brand and was determined to use them to strengthen Suzuki's market presence. The development team worked even harder toward their goal of building a high-performance engine that could win races and prove reliable on the street. Having just returned from their first entry in the Isle of Man TT, Honda was at Asama testing its latest machines and recording impressive results. Even so, the Koleda RB posted a marginally better lap time. The RB performed beyond expectations.
ホンダの川島さんとレース前に清水さんもうやられたな帰りおごれよとこういう話川島さんとなっておったんです。
本田さんが TT レース行ったんですね。持ち帰ってきた車が朝前入ってきたんです。まあ練習したり負けずを取ると走れるんですよね。だからこれいけるぞと。
A torrential downpour the morning of the final race left most of the track a muddy quagmire. Even so, things went smoothly for rider Mitsuo Ito and the rest of the team in the early stage of the race.
2周目にね、みっちゃんね、トップに出てね、もうこれはいけると、もらったなと思って言った瞬間、3周目が出てこない。
Though the Suzuki riders held the lead through the first half of the race, their lack of experience in such heavy rain eventually began to show. Fouled plugs, fuel leaks and falls knocked them out of contention one after the other.
天候がガラリとかあって、雨降りのレースになっちゃって、ホンダも転んだけどもうちも転んじゃって、結果的には僕はリタイアしちゃったんですけど、非常に勝負をしたんです。
When all was said and done, Michio Ichino's fifth place finish was the team's only result. The Suzuki team had arrived in Asama brimming with confidence, but left with their hopes quashed. However, the disheartened team received an unexpected piece of news at the end of the year. The story behind this began a short time earlier when Shunzo Suzuki found himself on the same train as Soichiro Honda. Honda said, "Your bikes are incredibly fast. Why don't you race them overseas?" Shunzo Suzuki had been looking for an opportunity to sell motorcycles overseas. He took these words as a premonition. At the end of December, he announced his desire to enter the Isle of Man TT the next year. This decision would forever change the company's future.
やっぱりね、しかし僕はね、経営者ですよね、海外これから進出しなきゃいかんっていう時代ですからね。
日本の国内生産がね、もうほとんどピークに達してる。海外しかないと。で、海外へ出ていこう。で、レースへ出るとね、そのレースっていうのがもう毎週ね、ジャーナリストかなんかでも世界中に各国にずっとヨーロッパへね、伝わっていくんですよ。一番いい宣伝なんですね。それがあったからね、海外行ってじゃあ勝とうと。
The Isle of Man TT represented the pinnacle of motorcycle racing. It boasted the longest tradition and highest prestige of any Grand Prix racing venue. Makers from around the world competed there in what could be compared to the Olympics of the motorcycling world. A victory on the Isle of Man could be likened to conquering the motorcycling world. It's that big a race. Shunzo Suzuki's proclamation came as a bolt from the blue to the engineers who'd been thinking the company would never enter another race. As others in Japan were welcoming in 1960, these men gave up their New Year vacation to begin developing a new racing machine from the ground up. Preparing one in time to travel to Britain and enter their first Isle of Man TT in just 6 months presented a huge challenge. On a rational level, the decision seemed a reckless one. Sacrificing both sleep and days off, the development team met this challenge head-on and managed to complete a new engine by the end of January. An advance party was dispatched to the Isle of Man in February. Their mission was to study the 60-kilometer racetrack, arrange lodging for the team members, and check into the availability of parts and supplies the team would need. Back in Hamamatsu, development continued at a feverish pitch, and the new machine was completed in March. Though the engine produced 13 horsepower at 11,000 RPM, it was sorely underpowered when compared to the 20 horsepower produced by the class leader MV Augusta from Italy. The company's test track was also completed around this time, allowing the team to test completely in-house. This roughly coincided with a visit to Japan by rider Jeff Duke, who kindly shared his vast knowledge of the TT with the team. Countless rounds of trial and error testing revealed that the key to increasing power lay in the design of the expansion chamber.
とにかく設計してものを作ってテストをしていこうと、だいぶ荒っぽい計画を組んだんですけども、しかし集まった人間がみんなやる気でしたから、レースに情熱持ってましたから、徹底作業の連続で、時期的には間に合う時期に完成したんですね。
The company's employees gathered to send off the team and wish them success. Carrying with them the hopes and expectations of all at home, they departed for the Isle of Man on May the 9th, 1960. The team had 8 members, including manager Takeharu Okano and riders Mitsuo Ito, Michio Ichino and Toshio Matsumoto. Suzuki and Honda formed a national team under the direction of the Japan Small Automobile Manufacturers Association and headed to England together. When the team arrived on the Isle of Man, local hero Jeff Duke gave them a rundown on the course's key points. Mitsuo Ito shares his impression of seeing the 60-kilometer course in person.
これはびっくりしましたよ。日本にいる時には舗装路なんて走ったことないんだから。一般公道だって砂利道だからね。国道1号線だって砂利道。
Most everything was a new experience and conditions were tough. However, the local people were curious about the foreign contingent and welcomed the Japanese with open arms. The journey also created an opportunity to get better acquainted with the members of the Honda team. Such moments helped the team unwind a little. The owner of the hotel where they stayed offered words of encouragement. Don't worry about winning the first year. Just familiarize yourself with the course. Next year you can get out there and apply what you learned. Then in your 3rd year, you must aim for a win. Official practice runs began on June the 4th. This is when the performance gap between the Suzuki team and those from the West became abundantly clear.
まあいろいろね遅れてましたね。だいたい車の性能がね、日本の我々が140キロ走るところを MV アグスター、イタリアの車170キロなんですよ。最後勝負になりもう勝てっこないです。
There was a 30 kilometer per hour difference in top speed. The team felt keenly the barrier between them and what it took to be competitive internationally. Making matters worse, ace rider Mitsuo Ito came off his bike shortly after the practice run had begun.
転んだって言われるけど、僕が本当の原因で転んでるとは思えないんです。あれはサスペンションっていうのはね、ただバネついてただけだから。
Suzuki's first entry in the Isle of Man TT ended with Toshio Matsumoto finishing 15th and receiving a bronze replica trophy. Michio Ichino finished in 16th and Rei Fei, who'd replaced the injured Mitsuo Ito, finished in 18th place. All 3 completed the race, and while the results were modest, the team was going home with valuable experience and know-how that could only be gained by participating in the Isle of Man TT. For the coming 1961 season, Suzuki signed Paddy Driver to join Mitsuo Ito and the other Japanese riders on the team. He traveled to Japan to participate in the development testing. Reaching beyond the Isle of Man TT, Suzuki decided to enter GP races around the world. Paddy Driver participated from the first race of the GP season, but the results were less than satisfactory. The Isle of Man TT was the 4th race on the schedule. Sadly, the Suzuki team's second outing there ended in a crushing defeat. The best results the team managed in the season were 14th place finishes in the 125cc class at the Dutch and Belgian GP races, and a 7th place finish in the 250cc class at the Belgian GP. Somewhat reluctantly, the team cancelled participation in the second half of the season and returned to Japan. Suzuki's second year challenging the International GP Series proved to be a severe test. In contrast, Yamaha made a great showing in their first entry in the GP Series. Honda, now in its third year, impressed all by taking both the constructors' and riders' titles in the 125cc and 250cc classes. In light of these results, there were those who once again raised the opinion that two-stroke engines were not well suited to GP racing and that Suzuki should change to four strokes. However, Shunzo Suzuki did not waver in commanding the team to continue two-stroke engine R&D and to continue their challenge in the World GP Championship Series. He firmly believed that Suzuki must win races while staying true to their own path. About this time, the team gained another boost to its competitive strength. They hired Ernst Degner, a top rider from East Germany who consistently competed at the top of the pack on a two-stroke MZ. Degner was intrigued with the energy Suzuki members were devoting to developing winning machines. Degner defected late in the 1961 season, immediately following the Swedish GP. After signing a contract with Suzuki to ride in the 1962 season, he took an active role in development. Mopeds and scooters were the focus of development as economies began to recover after World War II. Responding to demand for convenient and affordable transportation, they quickly became popular around the world, and this led to the rise of the 50cc class in international racing. When the 50cc class was added to the 1962 GP World Championship Series, Suzuki and Honda were among the first makers to announce their intention to enter. Development began immediately of machines that could compete against Kreidler, the reigning 50cc champion on the European circuit. Suzuki now found itself preparing to challenge the 50cc, 125cc and 250cc classes in 1962. Suzuki's third year in the GP World Championship Series began with the season's first race. At the opening race in Spain, the team finished in 7th, 11th and 15th places in the 50cc class, but was forced to retire in both the 125cc and 250cc classes. Deciding to focus their race activities on the 50cc class, Suzuki cancelled its plans to enter the 250cc class for the rest of the season. At the second race, the French GP, arch-rival Kreidler did not yield an inch. Kreidler was clearly the dominant power in the 50cc class. Even so, Suzuki's dream was about to come true. Degner rode the Suzuki RM62 to consecutive wins at the next 4 races in the Isle of Man, the Netherlands, Belgium and West Germany. These victories were enough to win him the Riders' Championship title for 1962. A major factor in this victory was the superhuman effort of the Research 3 team back in Hamamatsu. Though their newly developed rotary valve had already boosted charging efficiency greatly by the beginning of the season, engine output remained less than satisfactory. The cause lay in the shape of the expansion chamber. The development team built dozens of prototype chambers as they worked to surmount this problem. While the race team spent sleepless nights in Europe troubleshooting problems on a daily basis, the team of engineers back in Japan continued working through the night to build the parts needed to be more competitive. Then, just before the TT was scheduled to begin, and after the team had fabricated over 100 prototype chambers, the test engine suddenly demonstrated a huge boost in power. This development left the members of Research 3 confident that a two-stroke engine could compete.
排気管っていうのは非常に大切な5ミリ縮めると500回転回転が変わっちゃうんですよ。
例えばテールパイプをこれの長さを例えば3ミリずつぐらい作ったとか、径を 0.5 飛びかなぐらいで作ったとかね、細かいそれのまた組み合わせですから。それで1000分ぐらいになるんですよ。
夢中になって配管をめちゃくちゃたくさん作って馬力アップに貢献する。
This was encouraging, but the Isle of Man race was about to begin. There was no time to sit back and enjoy their achievement. They quickly packaged up the engine and chamber assembly, added a note instructing the race team to use it just as it was, and shipped it off by air freight. As soon as the shipment arrived on the Isle of Man, the parts were mounted on the racing machines. On the day of official qualifying, something happened that nobody could have expected. Degner posted the fastest qualifying time in the 50cc class. At that moment, the entire team was filled with a sense that their efforts were paying off. Raring to go when the time came for the 50cc final, Degner and the Suzuki RM62 maintained the same momentum as during qualifying. He not only beat the Kreidler and Honda machines, he also took the checkered flag 18 seconds ahead of the second-place bike. It was a victory both he and the Suzuki team had dreamed about. Degner's average time was 120.9 kilometers per hour, and he posted a remarkable top speed of 144.8 kilometers per hour. Mitsuo Ito finished in 5th place, Michio Ichino in 6th place, and newcomer Seiichi Suzuki took 8th place. Not only did all the Suzuki riders complete the race, they all earned silver replica trophies in the process. It was the first time a two-stroke machine had won on the Isle of Man since 1938.
コースが1周60キロで長いでしょ。だから途中でサルビストレートっていうところで電話連絡をするようになってるんですよね。それが本部の方へ入ってきて、それで今トップだよっていうのが入って、それであれです。
結果聞いた時はね、やっぱ私ら涙出ましたね。
小さなピストンでね。
日本製のバイクがすごい綺麗。
The local media reported the results, saying history was made on Friday when the 50cc final race began. The victory stood in direct opposition to the specialists' predictions that a four-stroke machine would win. It left the critics silent. True to the words of the hotel owner, Suzuki had triumphed in their 3rd year of challenging the GP World Championship. Suzuki and Degner continued to win, and in the first season the 50cc class became part of the World Championship Series, they took both the Constructors' and Riders' titles.
ものすごく喜んでくれたんでね。
世界選手権の 50cc っていうのができた初めての年なんですよ。それだから値打ちがあるんですね。初代チャンピオンだからね。
In contrast, the team's best result in the 125cc class was a 4th place finish at the Dutch TT. After missing about half the races in the season, the best result in the 250cc class was a 5th place finish at the Dutch TT. Reflecting on these results, the development team wasted no time in getting down to work on new machines for the next season.
イギリスのバンを小さいバンをね、小さいって2台と積んで、それを5台用意して、それをずらんとこう走って遠征してたんだけど、それがものすごく宣伝になったんだね、あれね。鈴木ジャパンって書いたバンでね、5台ずらがってあちこち走るわけですよ、田舎道からないからね。随分宣伝になりましたよね、あれも。
Suzuki's goal for the 1963 season was to take the 50cc class for a 2nd straight year, while also winning the championship in the 125cc class. A concerted effort to further develop the 50cc engine increased its output to 11 horsepower. The transmission was also changed to a 9-speed to help keep the bike within its narrow power band. The 125cc RT63 engine increased maximum output significantly to 25 horsepower. Also gaining an 8-speed gearbox, Suzuki's 125cc entry for the 1963 season was a more competitive machine. With bikes that were ready to compete at the highest level in both classes, the team was in high spirits.
うちのエンジンなんていうかもう1万7000とか最後はもう2万回転近く回ったんですけど、動弁系っていうのがいろいろ工夫してもなかなか回転上げられない。
短気筒で勝負したら絶対ツサクの方が強い。同じ 50cc で本田さんとうちで比較した場合にはもう絶対うちの方が勝てる。
And thus the highly anticipated 1963 season began. Though Suzuki finished second in the 50cc class and seventh in the 125cc class at the season-opening Spanish GP, things were destined to go fabulously from the second race on. Newly signed rider Hugh Anderson won the West German GP 50cc class race, with his teammates following in second, third, fifth and sixth place. Degner and Anderson also pulled off a 1-2 finish in the 125cc class. Suzuki would no longer allow people to say that two-stroke engines could not win races. The company's technology was beginning to dominate GP racing. The team continued to post wonderful results in the following races. After finishing second at the third race in France, the team went on to win consecutive races on the Isle of Man and in the Netherlands and Belgium. Even better, the team practically swept the podium each time. The new 125cc machine also performed brilliantly. Starting with the second race in West Germany, it went unrivaled and won all 9 races in which it was entered. Let's take a look back at the fourth race of the season on the Isle of Man. Entrants in the popular 50cc race included Hans Anscheit riding for Kreidler and Degner and Anderson riding for Suzuki, along with Japanese riders Ito, Morishita and Ichino. In the early stages of the race, Anscheit managed to keep Degner in his sights. But the RM63 demonstrated great stability and couldn't be rivaled. The Suzuki bikes gained further ground as the race went on, and on the last lap, Ito passed the leaders and moved out front. Ito had earned the lead and went on to take the checkered flag and win. With this, he became the first Japanese rider to win the Isle of Man TT. Ito stood atop the podium, flanked by second-place finisher Anderson and third-place finisher Anscheit. But there was one thing out of the ordinary with this award ceremony. The national anthem of the winning rider's country failed to play.
日本の君が動いてないです、主催者に。優勝者ってのはあんまり影響なかったから、優勝が。だけど、どっかから集めてきた一小節聞いちゃってとね、君が潮にやちよいぐらいから始まったかな。だからみんなこうどこの国旗だって国家だっていうような感じでしてね。まあとにして初めてですもんね。
June the 15th, 1963. Employees arriving for work at Suzuki's head office on the Saturday morning following the race heard the news of Ito's victory. A crowd gathered and cheers of joy resounded outside the entrance. Even before the 1963 World Championship season ended, Suzuki had already won the constructors' title in both the 50cc and 125cc classes. Without question, the highlight was Mitsuo Ito's victory at the Isle of Man TT. The year also began a glorious string of victories for Japanese racing bikes that would continue through the rest of the decade.
修さんがレースチームにくっついて回ってたんです。僕ら徹夜で仕事してるでしょ、現地でも。食事する間がないんですよね、ほとんどね。その時の宣伝課長と修さんとポリバケツを持ってチャイニーズレストラン行って、チャーハン炒めてもらってバケツへ入れて、スープを作ってもらってバケツへ入れて、酢豚を作ってもらって入れて、抱えてガレージまでこうやって運んでくれて食わしてくれたんだ。それは嬉しかったね。
In 1964, Suzuki took the constructors' title for the third straight year. 4 wins in the 125cc class weren't enough to take the title. That went to Honda instead. The best result in the 250cc class was a third-place finish in the French GP. The pace with which the respective teams' riders were getting faster on the World GP circuit was remarkable. Even when a team won the championship, there wasn't a moment to rest back on their laurels. At the end of the year, Suzuki completed construction of the new test course they'd been waiting for.
やっぱりヨーロッパと走るためにはこんなサーキットが必要だっていうのは日本じゃ走るとこないから作ってくれと俊三社長に言ったら「おいじゃあ作れいいじゃねえか」スールの一声で作ってくれたのが龍洋ですよ。あそこへサーキットを作ってそれでテスト連続毎日朝から晩までやるようになって車が出来上がってきたのさ64年ですよねあれできたの。満島の路面をここへ龍洋へ持ってきて作ってくれた。そのぐらい熱入ってだからものづくりに鈴木の場合はあの交差がいれば貢献してます。
In 1965 and following seasons, Suzuki and the works teams from other Japanese makers continued to dominate the GP World Championship Series. However, the feverish pitch of the battle to develop more advanced technologies came to an abrupt halt later in the decade. Development costs were so high, only a few makers could win races. Japanese makers had been monopolizing the podium in recent years. The Japanese works teams all retired from the GP World Championship Series in protest at new regulations implemented in 1968.
68年から車両規則になったからレベルダウンな規則になってるもんだから
もう今度は後ろ向きになるから車としては
だからやめましょうよってだったんです。
The Suzuki Works team vanished from the GP series in 1968. While participating in the heated battles of the 1960s and after winning its first 50cc class championship in 1962, Suzuki took the constructors' title 5 times and won 6 riders' titles. They also took the 125cc class constructors and riders' titles twice each. During this period, Suzuki had established the 2-stroke engine as the fastest in the world, despite the thinking that they weren't suited to racing. The only standard for measuring a team's worth in World Championship racing is whether it wins or loses. Technology is what supports this measure. Through its outstanding achievements in GP racing, Suzuki proved to the world that they had the ability to innovate and to develop winning 2-stroke engines. For many years afterward, 2-stroke engines continued to reign over the GP World Championship. There's no doubt that one reason for this lay with the amazing speed achieved by Suzuki's 2-stroke engines. Times change, and sadly one seldom sees 2-stroke engines today. However, the outstanding technologies they employ have continued to be elevated to the highest level through the relentless efforts of Suzuki's engineers. These technologies have been fed into development of motorcycles and cars. They've yielded great vehicles and helped make Suzuki popular with drivers and riders around the world.
なんか全て楽しかったですね。
私の人生で出始めはレース家ですから、幸せな人生を送ったなと思っています。
夢を持てばどんな仕事でもできるなってのはそれが今の実感です。
バリシンがなんでこのヨーロッパのレース来ないだっていう、チームの中でそういうことを言ってくれたっていうのは信頼してくれたなと思いましてね、非常に満足できました。
で我々レースやってる時にね、例えばオランダ行って「お前鈴木かホンダか」 だスズキかホンダですよ。最初の知名度をヨーロッパに売り込んだのは。そういう意味でね、世界選手権を取ったという功績は私は非常に大きかったんじゃないかと。
皆さんもいろいろ個性がありましたしね、優秀な人ばっかりですよ。やっぱりレースやってね、同じ釜の飯を食いながらね、楽しいレースやらせてもらって、終わった後もね、それに関連するような仕事をやらせてもらって、人生考えたらね、僕は楽しい鈴木社員であったなと思いますね。
将来この内燃機関というのがどうなるのかですね、電気であるのか、そういうことで最先端の経験しないと技術進歩はないわけですね。前を向いてやっていただければそれでいいんじゃないかと思いますよ。
Suzuki set a course in the 1950s that transformed it from a maker of looms into a comprehensive motorcycle and automobile maker. The company started from scratch to build and field competitive racing machines. The challenge to take on the world and realize their dreams was a mighty one. It presented difficult challenges, but also many victories and moments of glory. Today, that same spirit of challenge lives on as strong as ever at Suzuki.